Oh, I didn't change the text in the stream. Give me 1 second. This is Thursday, December 26th. I spelled Thursday wrong. There we go. All right, everything is good. It's Thursday, December 26th, 2024. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about fear. So we're hanging out, having a dinner party at Scott's place last night with the latkes. Scott made some pretty good skakas, I would say.
Okay. The recipe from, the internet.
Yeah, the last few times I've tried to make latkes, it has not gone well. But I think it's partly because
it's not that hard.
I think the hardest part is the oil just has to actually be the right temperature.
I mean, what you do is you take one little potato piece and you put it in the oil, and you wait, and when that potato piece is going fizzle, 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 then the oil's hot enough.
But
and then you should also try to use if you can, use a cast iron pan, because that will retain heat. So when you add latkes, the oil temperature doesn't suddenly drop, right? It'll stay.
It's something I would, it's the kind of thing, I don't like frying stuff in our apartment, partly because, unlike you, our fume hood just goes through filters and right back into the apartment. We don't have an exterior venting fume hood in our kitchen. So frying stuff puts oil everywhere. So we don't fry things that often. But I will say, if I had the dream home where I could set everything up right, I would probably actually have a dedicated 4-reel fryer, a small one. Because we had one as a kid. When I was a kid, we had a deep fryer that we actually used a lot.
I mean, if the ideal situation, right, would be that I would have an outdoor cooking area for anything that was smoky or noxious or involved real fire, and indoors we would only use, induction and nothing that could really, pollute the air in the home, right?
Yep, but is what it is. So over dinner, we were talking about things, and of course, like you do in our crowd, a topic that came up were relics of saints, because I went to a Catholic school and that had a relic, and that's just something elementary school kid, hey, here's the knuckle bone of Saint what's his fuck, and it's magic.
I thought that relic just meant old artifact until at some point I learned that it actually meant literally piece of a saint. Vecna's eyeball or whatever.
Yep.
But, there was a long period where I didn't know that what relic actually meant. I only knew the more colloquial definition where you'd say that old relic, right?
But see, that is funny because the old this is something that was a capitalized word that meant crazy magic stuff. Which is why when we did our old short-lived but surprisingly popular Radio Free Equestria, you may recall that we were deeply convinced and made a strong argument that heart, the relic in the crystal pony whatever, was an actual relic of that other old, I don't remember the names of any of those ponies, but the evil pony that used to live there.
Yeah, probably.
But so anyway, I went to a Catholic school that had a relic. We had a piece of a saint, and we were talking about the aspect of the saint. And I was explaining to a bunch of our friends a terrifying concept that I learned in elementary school, described as the odor of sanctity. Which, if you're not familiar, and you can imagine how this came to be, the odor of sanctity was, on one hand, an ontological state of being for a saint, being in a state of grace, using the word odor, an air of grace or an odor of grace. And that's probably the origin of the term. But to Catholics, it also means a literal smell that saints smell like. And it's supposed to be vaguely floral. There were samples of it that we were supposed to smell, an oil that smelled kind of like roses in our school. That's just how Catholics were. So the odor of sanctity is, to many Catholics, a actual smell that comes out of real saints, usually after they die or if you're futzing with their corpse. What I did not know until I looked up the Wikipedia article on the odor of sanctity last night to find some corroborating evidence was that saints that exude this aura are a special kind of saint that are called myroblytes, which sounds surprisingly familiar to Cenobites. So now I'm imagining that Event Horizon is in the same timeline as the Catholic Church. But I digress.
Isn't Cenobite the Hellraiser thing?
Oh yeah, the Hellraiser, the guy, which is
that
adjacent.
What that is?
Yeah, that's the race of weirdos that pop out and torture you if you solve the puzzle box.
Are they? Hold on.
Yeah, Cenobite.
Yeah, Cenobite. Okay. Yeah, I knew something correctly. Yeah.
So myroblyte.
What was the other thing you said? The Event Horizon.
You ever watch the movie Event Horizon?
I think I know there's a movie called Event Horizon, but I don't think there's any Cenobites in it.
Arguably, so what happens in Event Horizon is very Cenobite adjacent. It's a movie you should watch if you've never seen it.
I went to the webpage, the Wikipedia page for the film, and it has absolutely no connection to Hellraiser or Cenobites.
I mean, not canonically, but the movie is about a ship that basically encounters scary torture hell nonsense, and it makes the crew all go insane.
All right, but I'm saying it's not, none of the people aren't the same. It's not the same universe. It's
no,
not.
Absolutely not. But weird sex adjacent torture hell from space is the connecting theme between all of these, if that's the grade.
Are the Cenobites and Hellraiser from space or just another dimension?
I don't actually know, because I've only ever seen Hellraiser 1, and
there's so much lore involving them, but like you don't get any of that lore in the movie.
No, the movie is
I've only seen the first one.
I have also only seen the first one, and I only saw it once as a kid.
Yeah.
But so anyway, there is a certain kind of saint in Christianity, mostly Catholicism and Orthodox Christians, who are called myroblytes because they exude this stuff. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. There aren't that many myroblytes. However, this is taken to be extremely and terrifyingly literal. So for example, one of the myroblyte saints is Nihilus, the myrrh streamer. And from everything that I read about this guy, myrrh, or at least something that they said was myrrh, just kind of poured out of his body, and it was a thing.
Probably some kind of pus,
I imagine. But then I looked up one of these saints on the list of myroblyte saints was named Nicholas. And I'm like, wait a minute, Nicholas? And Emily's like, wait, Nicholas as in Saint Nicholas, as in Santa Claus? And I assume...
He said toys. Toys were oozing out.
Now, I assume
that
there is more than one Saint Nicholas, and that the
Peppermint.
That Christmas Santa Claus, Sinter Nicholas, is not the same saint as the myroblyte. But no, it turns out...
it would be a different... It wouldn't have the same name. They don't reuse names.
I mean, they could, because one Orthodox.
They always do even when they reuse Pope names, they're always like the second.
That's different though, because Pope names are following the same rules as royalty for confusing reasons. You take a Pope's name. Saints don't take a name; they just are named that. But it gets complicated. But anyway, the long story short, we determined that it is in fact true that Santa Claus is one of the few myroblyte saints that oozes.
Where is the relic of Santa Claus, and what's it? Is that at the North Pole? Where do they put it? Is it? Can I see the ooze?
So I don't know where the relics are. The relics continued to produce myrrh when they were brought to, I guess, the city of Bari in the 1100s. In 1966, a vault in the crypt underneath the Basilica de San Nicola was dedicated to an Orthodox chapel with an iconostasis. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to click on that. In commemoration of the recent lifting of the anathemas. I don't understand that. The Roman Catholic Nation Church, blah, 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 blah. Schism 1054. I thought that sentence was going to explain this, but it didn't. It keeps going. I have no idea. Anyway, St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, is an oozing saint canonically. That is what we have determined. What he oozed was apparently myrrh, and beyond that, read the Wikipedia because
they really love that myrrh.
They really do, which Penny Arcade was talking about recently as well.
We should hoard all the myrrh. There's like a myrrh shortage where the Catholics freak out, and could we like overcharge them for the myrrh?
Ooh.
Like keep the myrrh like De Beers keeps diamonds, like big myrrh ball. Like no one else can grow any myrrh.
Myrrh, but what about
We got
frankincense?
a lock on the myrrh production.
Yeah. So yeah, Santa Claus is a myroblyte, and that's a little tidbit you can drop on your family the next time you hang out with them. Anyway, got any news?
I'm just looking at what myrrh actually is. It's a resin that comes from a thorny tree.
Or a saint, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Do I have a news? What was the news? All right. So today, ChatGPT, which I don't use anyway, was down for quite a while. And the cause of that was supposedly some kind of power outage at the data center. And it's like, bro, what kind of data center is that? It's like other data centers have, multi-region capacity. They got generators,
Well, not even that, but like I've been doing serious enterprise IT for almost 20 years. And other than the Great Northeast Power Outage and the hurricane that took down all the data centers in New York, I have never had a power outage cause an outage in my entire career, because that's like babies first. Don't fuck that up unless you're so small it doesn't matter. I don't have a lot of confidence in ChatGPT if that is what caused the outage.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some other things, and it's like, yeah, there's outages for other reasons that happen, even at the biggest places, right? And there are outages at places like Reddit is down basically like a lot, just because, and they've always been that way. I don't know what the hell's wrong with them, but they just suck. Like staying up and whatever. But it's pretty rare to see one that goes down for a power outage that's a major place, right? But not just a major place, but regardless of what, how I feel about it, or if I'm going to use it or whatever, many other people are building technology on top of ChatGPT. So when ChatGPT is down, they're down. And so, or at least partially down to some extent. And so if you're going to build something on top of something else, you need the something else to be a strong foundation and not people who have an outage.
ChatGPT is not a good foundation to build anything on, even if it never goes down.
Right. It's also, while I hate to say AI because it isn't.
Well, it is by all modern definitions of AI, but it's only not AI by the colloquial use most people make of the term artificial intelligence.
Anyway, the point is that the Matrix is really prescient in showing that, the Skynet or whatever is going to really need power somehow. And if humans, aren't, keeping their power plants up, there's nothing that ChatGPT can do about it. ChatGPT could do about if we fuck up the electricity, it's off, right? So if anyone has fears of, a Skynet soon, don't worry. Pulling the plug is still going to work just great. Yeah,
like a squirrel could take Skynet down in our actual world. Squirrels often take things down. Squirrels cause a lot of power outages.
We don't have to worry until, the Matrix situation happens where it can somehow power itself, right, by running a power plant and maintaining a power plant and getting fuel for the power plant and doing all those things without any humans whatsoever. Don't worry, we can just pull the plug. We're good.
I'm going to toss a short verse from the chat on the Geek Nights episode right now. Take a lick from old Saint Nick.
Tasty. I wonder what myrrh tastes like.
I'm actually a little curious because I like pine sap.
I'm reading about myrrh. It says it's been used for, medicine and perfumery and incense. So it must smell good to somebody.
Yeah, we're gonna get some myrrh, get some precious ambergris.
And they mixed it with pasca. I don't know what that is, or wine. Sure. To use it to produce pleasurable feelings. I wonder how much of that was the wine. And as an anti-inflammatory and analgesic, I wonder how well it worked at that.
Yeah. I don't know.
I wouldn't recommend it today. I would recommend evidence-based
aspirin.
medicine. Yeah. But maybe there is a real medicine they make with myrrh. I don't know.
Could be. Well, it's a total aside, but there's homeopathy, which is just fake. But herbalism is almost worse in that some of it is just fake and things don't do anything. But some of it is, yes, there's a chemical in that herb and you shouldn't be taking random doses of it.
Right. Well, I mean, I always say like, hey, penicillin comes from a mold,
Yep.
right? If you are trapped in the woods alone and you have a bacterial infection and you know with your modern knowledge that that's the right mold that
Yep.
has the penicillin, okay, right?
Yep.
But if you're in society that can take the mold, extract the penicillin, get rid of the rest of the mold that you don't
Yeah.
want to eat, right? And accurately dose the penicillin to the correct amounts and such, don't go fucking with mold, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same thing. If myrrh somehow contains some chemicals that are medically useful, right? Then you still shouldn't be fucking with myrrh. You should be waiting for some pharmaceutical company to take myrrh and process it and create medicine with accurate dosage and safety with whatever was in the myrrh, right? Don't go fucking with the myrrh itself. That's unless you're stuck in the woods and you need the myrrh, you need an analgesic, and it's gonna right. That's not happening.
So, in some news, it happened again, and it's kind of a big deal. I do want to talk about it a little bit. So Russia shot down an airliner again.
Well, we think so.
So
Probably.
new reporting just in the last hour, it's pretty likely Russia shot it down. And if Russia didn't shoot it down, then someone else like Chechnyan rebels shot it down because it was
And
definitely shot down.
It doesn't seem like it crashed by accident.
Yep. Russia
And
also just now released a statement saying that nobody should speculate that Russia shot it down and that there will be consequences if anyone does.
Well,
So-
because they didn't do it on right.
they didn't do it on purpose. I'm confident they didn't do it on purpose.
There was no reason for them to do this, right?
Yeah.
Even the evil people, it's like you don't just they just don't want to shoot planes down randomly
Well,
of
so
non-enemies. and
Russia
cause trouble for themselves.
has shot down several airliners through over history. And one of them that they shot down during the earlier part of the Cold War was kind of on purpose. Like,
yes, but we're talking about this one. This
Yeah.
one, it would be really wild if it was on purpose, because why? Was there there was an important person they didn't like?
I was about to say the only plausible reason Russia would shoot it down on purpose was if it was a just very coarse assassination.
But I don't think there was. There's no evidence to suggest
what seems to have happened. I was reading a lot about this today. It looks like Russia has, for a while now, been pretty regularly shutting down all their airports and activating their air defenses because of, defending themselves from Ukrainian drones, which is a thing. They're being attacked rightly for their war. And we live in the U.S., which is a country that doesn't really have that kind of air defenses because we don't really have any hostile neighbors. But like Russia is a country that has anti-aircraft systems all the fuck over the place. So what they will do, summarizing, is when Russia believes it's under attack, they will basically order all their airports closed, like suddenly, so planes have to divert, and then all the air defenses activate and may target anything that continues to approach the airports or Russian airspace. So it looks like Russia declared one of those emergencies right around the time this plane got shot down. So it's pretty likely their air defenses were active. This plane was in the area, and thus the plane just got targeted. But
I guess they don't have a human sitting there to be like, don't shoot that one. It's like it just automatically shoots.
So it depends. There's lots of kinds of air defense systems, and I'm not an expert on this stuff.
I don't know. What do I know?
If you want to look it up, the chatter is that the surface-to-air missile that was most likely used was a Pantsir S-1, which is kind of an old, I guess,
there
Soviet
be like
era
debris, missile, like on the ground? Yeah.
Well, no. So the reason they know is partly because of the state of the plane, because the plane landed like pretty well intact, and you can see the shrapnel damage to the rear fin and to a couple other parts of the plane. So anyway, I would advise not getting on a commercial airliner that goes anywhere near Russia anytime soon.
I imagine the commercial airlines are gonna fly far
Very
away from
few commercial airlines actually do fly in that airspace. It's mostly Middle Eastern airlines and Russian airlines and Russian ally airlines, and like Delta doesn't have flights that go anywhere near these places right now.
You don't say.
Yeah. But in some other news, you might have noticed there's been a lot of cable and internet outages over the last year and a half in the Black Sea and in areas around Russia also related to the war. And a lot of those outages have been blamed on basically ships, quote, accidentally dropping their anchors and just fucking up cables.
Right, well, Russia, right, there's a lot of sanctions on them and they need money. And so they got to sell the oil that they drill up, right? And so what they do is, even the U.S. does this, right? Is you get a whole bunch of boats, and those boats have a flag on them from some other country, some African country, right? Like I think a lot of the boats the U.S. has are like from Liberia.
Russia uses Cook Islands often.
Yeah, Russia, Gabon is one that gets used a lot, right? But basically, it's weird. It's like, you think the only ship, like most of the ships that have U.S. flags on them are either the actual U.S. Navy or U.S. civilians with like recreational vehicles.
Now, see,
right?
I would say
commercial boats rarely have like U.S. flags.
Now, this is obviously a stupid loophole. Like, if I were in charge of the United States, not that that's going to happen. If you're a cruise ship with Americans on it and you're a U.S. company, you're having a fucking U.S. flag on your cruise ship,
right.
And you're paying taxes in the United States.
Right. The point is, Russia, if it had a Russian flag on it, people wouldn't let it deliver oil.
Yep.
So, it's some Gabon ship. Right, that's really a Russian ship, and it's delivering oil and getting money for Russia. But it's like, well, while I'm delivering oil, might as well drag my anchor where these undersea cables of our enemies happen to be, just to harass them and be an asshole. And that seems to be what they do.
So things have now escalated as of today.
And we could deny it. It's like, we didn't do it. Gabon did it by accident. It wasn't us.
Like, this ship is just shitty. Sorry. Which, to be fair, does happen. Like, shitty ships just cause problems all the time. All over the world.
And, the seas that are far away from land are quite lawless as advertised. That's not some joke of like, international waters. Like, no, that shit's real.
And also, like, even in the year 2024, like, sailing a giant ship across the ocean is not a trivial endeavor.
No, it's not.
So the escalation, what's happening now is that Finland seized one of these ships today. The ship appears to have caused some of those outages, and rather than just like letting it go and like lodging a complaint, and Finland's military boarded it, took it back to Finland, and right now Finland and Estonia have apparently arrested the crew, are interrogating them, are investigating the ship, are considering it sabotage, and it's a huge escalation in the Shadow Fleet War that's been happening for the last few years.
Hey, go right ahead. Good.
Yeah, I think this is the right thing to do. There shouldn't be... If the bar is ships are registered in, like, Liberia because people don't want to pay taxes or have insurance, if that's the bar, then I feel like, as a world, we should be rounding up ships that are somehow still below that bar. Like, they are a danger to everyone. Because even if there wasn't a war... Let's say, like, it wasn't this crazy war situation with Russia. Even if it was just shady people trying to sell oil and dodge sanctions, I don't want extremely shady, barely maintained oil tankers full of oil anywhere on the ocean. But anyway, things of the day. So last night, other than talking about the oozing saints, we started talking about Catalan poop-related Christmas traditions, and we discovered that two people in our group knew of two different poop-related traditions, and we got the wires crossed.
People in Catalonia really love poop.
They seem to. So we learned about both of them last night, and my thing of the day is a video from Extra History, which explains the Caga Tió, which is actually a really cute tradition that I'm glad I know about. It's absolutely adorable. I think it's a fun thing, and I like the point the video makes at the end, noting that sometimes cultural traditions, like Santa Claus or the poop log, don't have a strong reason to continue or some deep meaning other than it's kind of fun and people like doing it.
Listen, I mean, that's the best kind of
Yeah.
tradition / ritual, right? Is like you don't need to have, lore. We talked about your saints or whatever,
Yep.
right? Lore makes people feel, somehow connected, right? It has a function, but it's like you don't actually need lore, right? It's like you can just perform a ritual, right? Because you enjoy performing the ritual. It's like, oh, you better sing this prayer song, so God doesn't smite you. Or what if I just sing that song because I like singing that song and it's a nice song and I don't give a crap, right? About believe in any whatever, right? It's like you can do that. It's a thing you can do. You don't have to avoid, rituals and other things because there's no backing or reason for them. You don't need a reason for the other things you do in your life. It's like, why did you play that video game? There's no reason for it. You just like doing it. It's like, well, yes, it's why I hit this log with a stick. Same deal.
Yeah. So this video will teach you about both the pooping log and the pooping guy, both of which are just great. No one even has like a recorded, we don't know where the pooping guy even came from. It's just kind of always been there. But the YouTube comments are great too, because the first comment appears to be a Catalan person. Quote, "You nailed the song. Catalan is not easy to pronounce." And yes, we Catalans are a very scatological people.
Are you sure it's pronounced Catalan? I'm pretty sure it's Catalan.
I've actually heard both pretty equally, so forgive me.
I don't know.
But
I know how to say the word Catalonia, but I don't know if the singular, like, is it a Catalan? I don't think Catalan is right.
Nah. But the other comment, Tió de Nadal only brings small presents. Quote, "Oh, thank God, Tió de Nadal."
The thing I like the most about the Tió de Nadal is that the presents he poops out are always communal presents.
Yes.
He's not pooping out for just one. It's not like stockings where each person gets their own and it's very individualistic. It's like, no, we got one log and whatever he poops, everybody, right, gets to share, right, amongst eating up the poop.
So you got to think of the day?
Yeah, so you've probably seen this because the guy uploaded this video and it blew up all over the internet and most people have seen it by now. But basically, CRT TVs, which are large and a pain in the ass and no longer manufactured, mostly, pretty much, are still in demand for people who mostly play Smash Brothers because but people who want to play old video games and have them look correct and run at correct frame rates in the way, light gun games.
NTSC, 60 FPS.
Yeah. And people who, want to preserve, old, right, video technology, which is, good, right? So it seems like everyone who's interested in CRTs is interested in for the right reasons, and thus CRTs are going to be well preserved as long as those people exist. But CRTs, due to the nature of the technology, never got that big, right? It's like,
like a 27-inch CRT was fucking huge relative to what normal people would have for a very long time.
Right. Just because there were two reasons. One I knew is just like, yeah, they get really big and heavy and are hard to make. But another reason I learned from the video is that when they get so big, there's a vacuum inside there. So you have to, that vacuum is basically the outside of the TV has air that is exerting pressure on it. There's a vacuum inside. So it needs to be really, really strong to not just get crushed and implode.
I also learned that from the video. Like, I knew they were heavy, but I didn't quite really internalize that idea that as the tube gets bigger, the CRT itself gets bigger, the forces on it get bigger exponentially because of volume.
You have a bigger space, a vacant space on the inside as more of a vacuum, and now there's also more surface area for the air to press onto, and the piece of glass at the front is heavier and bigger. So CRTs never got much bigger than 40 inches. Apparently the biggest was this Sony, which was 42, 43 inches, something like that.
As far as we know, like the price difference between a 42-inch, which is this monster, and a 40-inch is enormous.
Well, this thing is also from 1989, which is like, a lot of the 40 inches that like people may have had or 36 inches.
That was late 90s, like the end of the CRT era.
This is 1989, and it was the biggest that ever was. And Sony made it just to be like, hell yeah, that's who we are. We're Sony, right? At the time when they were Sony. And so this TV, people knew it existed. They had, the manuals. They had seen pictures of it, but no one actually had one, right? And these nerds really wanted one. And this dude, by some miraculous circumstances, found one of the ones that they had a photo of. There's a whole story behind it. You can watch it in the video. He did get it. It says I found it. It's not clickbait. He got the TV. It's everything, it's cracked up to be.
Operation Big Boy.
Yeah. But, there's this 30-minute video, but usually I hate long YouTube videos. You could speed this one up a little bit, play it at 1.5x if you're, bored. But none of the video is repetitive. None of the video is wasting time with nonsense, right? He's telling the whole story with all of the pertinent details, covering everything. He's not clickbaiting or whatever. And it's a great story of the giant
The
CRT
only part
TV.
that was hard to watch were the explanations of tube technology as this ancient, crazy way to make video. Just
I think most people watching wouldn't know these. We know those things.
I mean, it's a
GeekNights listeners also probably know those things, but that's the start of the video, so you can skip, right? But
just this is probably how Grandpa felt when we would always play with the one rotary phone that existed in our family that still worked, and it's this ancient crazy thing, and Grandpa's probably just God damn it.
Anyway,
all right,
really, really great story. It's great how it turned out.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's also so we got a big one, not this big, not this TV, but I remember when I was a kid, the family voted because the Red Wings were ascendant in the NHL. So the family voted, do we get a new computer or do we get a big television? Because we'd never owned a big television ever. And the family vote, I got outvoted, and we got a big television instead of a computer.
I mean, did you already have a computer?
We had a 486 SX2 at the time.
Yeah, we had a 486.
Yep.
I had a 486 right up until, until I bought my own computer in 1998, 99.
Yep. I really wanted a Pentium, but we got the Pentium later. But, all right. Good. Little pause there. So fear,
No meta moment situation?
Oh, yeah, right. Meta moment. In the meta moment, we're going to be live at MagFest with between 3 and 6 panels. Details
That's a big
TBD.
variance there. You want to figure that out.
Yep. Well, so there are 3 confirmed, plus a 4th one that's me and Emily instead of me and Scott.
Okay, good.
One person sent me an email saying I should expect more, so TBD on that. But otherwise, MagFest is coming. If you don't have a hotel, well, good luck. MagFest is really hard to stay anywhere near, and I'm pretty sure everything's hella sold out.
I mean, it's really easy to stay somewhere that's not in National Harbor and go to MagFest, but the problem there is, your MagFest experience is diminished with lots of travel times, and, it's a 24/7 thing, so being there really amplifies how much you get for the same ticket price, and the ticket price is $145, I think, right now.
Is it? You know what? We have the privilege of being the talent. I've never bought a MagFest badge.
It's $145, and then starting on January 1st, it'll be $155.
You know what? MagFest is absolutely worth that.
It's cheaper than PAX.
Yeah. Especially divide $150 by 4 days going pretty much 24/7.
Yeah. If you had pre-registered as early as possible, it would be $125. So basically, they inch it up by $10 3 times.
Yeah, but MagFest is coming. Otherwise, PAX East will probably be at. ZenkaiCon, I'll be doing a few panels at. And I have to choose a book club book. I'm going to shift away from the Moomins because Scott's...
You don't have to. I didn't tell you you had to do that.
You were
just didn't do it.
You were so uninterested in reading the Moomin books.
So, that doesn't
despite
matter.
their cultural importance.
All right. Well, I mean,
despite their melancholy.
It's still your pick, but
Yeah, I'm
Gave
gonna
up on
back.
your own book club selection after so many months. You
Yep.
could have just, if you had just picked some and we could have read them, it would have taken 2 seconds.
No, I didn't have time to read. I was working. I got other stuff going on, but things are calming down. So I have a new selection. I'm gonna pose in the next Geek Nights episode for Scott. I've chosen one. I got to narrow down my second book. You can choose one of the two. And my new promise to you: neither of these books is nonfiction, and neither of these books is written by Foucault.
Okay, I think
Umberto Eco.
I think the reason that you really failed with your Moomin selection is not have anything to do with my reaction to it. I think the problem is that you didn't pick a specific book. You were just like Moomin books in general, and then you never bothered to actually pick specific book. If
Partly because of your strong
book,
visceral reaction during the episode.
it doesn't matter. You had to have the specific actual volume or volumes pre-selected, not just this general idea. Like you can't come in and be like, next book club selection, Wheel of Time books. It's like
that's all of read them all. 14.
If you had pick the specific volumes, I would have read them a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
So it's like for now on, I think we need a rule is that you must have like ISBN numbers in hand, right? When you make the selection, you can't just make some sort of general hand wavy.
But I also point it wouldn't have mattered because your reaction would have been the same regardless.
I would have read the books already.
Yeah, you would have read
months ago.
I'm not saying you wouldn't have read them.
The episode would have been done already.
I'm saying the episode wouldn't have been good.
That doesn't matter.
I think that does matter. I want the episode to be good.
Well.
So fear. I will admit, and I've talked about this a long time ago on Geek Nights, but of all the things I'm afraid of in the world, death is actually not one of them. Like I am like freakishly unafraid of death. Like it does not intersect with my worries in any way.
Yeah, that's why you do all kinds of stupid skiing type shit.
Skiing safer than
dying is the thing to be most afraid of.
Skiing is much
At least
safer.
Until I'm old, then I won't be afraid of it.
But I point out skiing is much safer than riding in a car or biking anywhere in New York City.
I'm super scared of riding in a car. Cars are dangerous AF.
Yeah, but you cycle on a regular basis.
Very carefully, way more carefully than everyone else.
But yeah, like I'm dead serious about this. Like I am not at all afraid of death. But there's a very important nuance here. Is there's a difference between being afraid of something and not wanting something to happen. I don't want to die. I will take extreme measures to avoid dying, but I'm not afraid of dying. Like it's not something that like I don't feel like my heart rate doesn't quicken. I don't feel anything about it.
It would if I was in imminent danger of dying.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I've been in relatively mortal peril, like a serious situation, it's always the same. It goes down the same way every time. And I've been in these situations a few times. It's like time slows down and I am trying to avoid the bad outcome, but I'm also kind of resigned to the fact that if this doesn't go well, that's it. And oh well, whatever. I've just
I mean, everything was correct until the resigned part.
But the resigned part is if it happens, it happens. Like, one time I remember very specifically was when I had Lyme disease, but I didn't know it was Lyme disease yet. I'd gone to a hospital. They at first told me they thought it was a brain tumor, which was stupid, and it clearly wasn't. And the scans showed nothing. And I went back home, and then I woke up in the middle of the night with like 103.9 fever, and I was delirious. And I was so delirious that instead of going to the hospital or calling 911, I remember thinking, I think I'm dying. Welp, I had a good run, and I just went back to bed. But then I woke up again like an hour later, like, wow, what the fuck? And I drove myself straight to the hospital. But like I had this moment where I just resigned myself to like, well, that's the end of me.
Yeah, no, if I'm ill, I'm just like, shit, I'm sick. This sucks. And then if I somehow think I'm ill enough to die, it immediately makes it way worse. Whether it's true, obviously it hasn't been true yet. But if it was, if I get that idea and it's somehow believable, suddenly it's way worse. It's like, because it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, but I guess like I'm kind of
I got shit to do. I can't die yet.
Yep, but it's hard. I almost have to define fear because there are things I don't want to happen. But the things I'm actually afraid of are abstract and have very little to do with me. Like, I'm mostly afraid of things like societies collapsing. But I'm not afraid of like things that can happen to me personally.
I mean, like, I try not to be a selfish person, but my fear is aligned mostly with selfishness, right? Of, harm is, I'm afraid of, I mean, when I was it wasn't always this way, right? And it's still not entirely this way, but I try to have my fear in alignment with reality, right? It's like, a lot of people I think are afraid of things that aren't actually likely to hurt them. Like they're afraid of crazy guy in the subway, right? And it's like, am I zero afraid of crazy guy in the subway? Not zero, but it's like less than a sliver, right? Because like I've seen so many crazy guy in the subway, and it's so rare, that anything's gonna happen, right?
But I am like I'm
other
aware.
People get in their car and drive with like a cell phone, like nothing's gonna happen, and I'm like every time I'm looking in a car, I'm like shit, that's right because it's likely to cause harm to me and people I care about, and that is what makes it scary.
And I guess that's where it becomes sort of a complicated aspect in that there's the visceral sense of fear, like heart rate raises, like you are afraid, you feel that fear. But then there's also the idea of, are you aware of a danger to the degree that you make specific preparations for it? And are those preparations proportional to the likelihood of the thing you're prepared for happening? And that's actually the area I think we can focus on the most. For example, we have bug out bags. Like, we are prepared for minor emergencies. Not like there is a bag at the door ready to grab and run out the door 2 seconds later, but like if there was a hurricane warning, we could get our stuff together and be out the door within an hour if we needed to.
Yeah, I could get out there.
Yeah. Like I prepare for things that are dangerous, I believe, relatively proportional to the likelihood of those dangers coming to reality.
Yeah, but prepping doesn't have too much to do with fear. That's just being reasonable.
Yeah, but I guess that's where I'm not really afraid of things, and maybe that's just me being super weird.
I mean, one thing I think is that a lot of people out there are they call things fear that aren't. Specifically, like when you see a scary movie, right? And something jumps out and goes boo with a little jump scare, right? And it's like a jump scare is not a scare; it's a surprise. Right? It's like, can I be gotten with a jump scare? Yes, right? Anyone, most people can be, right? And if it's timed really well, a really well timed, expertly executed jump scare is able to get someone on repeat goes because the timing is just so unpredictable and off that it's like, here it comes. I was half a second off in my preparation for it, and it got me again, right? Because it's such a good one.
You know, right? A good example of that, and even though, remember, I got to make it clear,
but jumping out is not scaring.
So the guy who made Five Nights at Freddy's is a super shitty person. Like, I want to be clear, but the game had one of those kinds of jump scares where when you lose the game, like the power would go out, and then you'd hear music, and then the jump scare would happen. But occasionally, like the time between the lights going out and the jump scare happening would vary. And when I was recording myself playing the game to make that video essay I made about the game a long time ago, there's a video of me where the music stop happens, the lights go out, and you see me like lean back from the screen because I know the jump's coming. And it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but doing it randomly is sort of like a hack, right? Yeah. A movie can do it. It's possible to make a movie with a really good one that works many times, right? You know, an example of one that doesn't work that many times is like in Independence Day. I always remember that one where the alien slams the dude up against the glass and he's like, peace, no peace, right? And it's like, that one got me exactly one time because it wasn't done that well. It didn't get me, and I noticed that it didn't get me again because like I got it in the movie theater, it got me, and then every time I watched the VHS, I would always remember, here it comes, and there it is.
But like Resident Evil games, you see some windows, if the windows are big enough, you assume a dog-like thing's gonna jump through those windows and attack me at some point. And
if a scary movie is actually scary, if it's actually fear-inducing, right? Then after the movie, you're gonna be like, you know, going about your business, and it's going to be like, the ideas or whatever it was that you saw there is going to be like haunting you. And you're going to be like, maybe it was a movie about a monster under the bed. And you're like, if you
look
check
under
your bed before you go to bed because you just watched a movie about a monster under the bed, you have been scared.
Well, when I was a little kid, if we'd watch an Unsolved Mysteries before we went to bed, might go around and like make sure the side door is actually locked before I go to sleep, which I wouldn't do normally.
Yeah. So there is a tie there to the preparation aspect, but it's like, if you are now, right, feeling worried about a thing, whether it's proportional to reality or not.
Yep.
Right. Because, you could be scared just proportional to reality. You're still scared. Right. Then that's, there's a worry that has built up like,
When I was very young, that was a lot more common, but things I was afraid of when I was young, the UFOs that might be real that I saw on TV.
I wasn't afraid of those. I was like, ooh.
Well, I was afraid of the government agents that would always come and destroy the evidence.
I wasn't afraid of them. I was just like, arr, curses. Damn you.
And I was afraid vaguely of skeletons and dark places when I was really young.
I don't know if I was, I guess I was afraid to the dark at some extent as a very young age, but mostly it was about, something being in the dark, right? It wasn't anything specific. It was just like when it was dark, you just I had like this feeling that was something there. And I could see, it's like, I can see that there's nothing there. Okay, cool. There wasn't, even though it wasn't a specific thing. It wasn't like, oh, it was this monster that was there or a vampire or a skeleton. It was just like something.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing. Good. All right. We're good.
But so in terms of like, if we sidestep the whole visceral fear versus like worrying about an outcome, things I actually worry about right now in the year 2024, like for one, and again, I'm not saying the odds are high. The odds are still extremely low. It's not something I like make specific preparations for, but I would be worried that humans might use a nuke again at some point. Like we're closer to that than we've been in a long time. It's something that
the people who run that little countdown thingy are worried also.
Yeah.
They haven't moved it in the other direction. They only move it in the worst direction.
Like that.
It's like
there are things
and they know better than anybody.
It's a thing that kind of should be afraid of, but you shouldn't necessarily be altering your life around. But
what the hell are you going to do about it? You're
exactly
going to get disintegrated or you're not.
Yep.
It's nothing.
It's with nuclear war. There's basically the escalation ramp is escalation 1 is one tactical weapon gets used somewhere once and then the whole world freaks out, but probably no more get used. And unless you're right under where it went off, you're going to be fine, or at least the nuke is not the problem that's going to get you. But the escalation beyond that is like full nuclear nukes everywhere war, in which case there's nothing you can do, which leads to my general disaster preparedness idea of I am unwilling to prepare at all for any disaster that I could not get away from safely within a day's worth of walking from where I live. Like if I walked for an entire day from where I am now, if I couldn't get somewhere that was safe from that problem, then there was nothing I could have done about that problem in the first place.
But the point is, I think, is that, even if something like that becomes likely, right, is like if you in your body, right, are like staying awake at night because you're thinking about like, oh shit, what if that happens?
That's counterproductive.
Right. That's not good. Right. It's like, so even if so it's like you should have those feelings proportional to likelihood. Right. But also measured against your ability to do anything.
Yep.
It's like, if a comet is going to come and smash into the earth, and by the way, it's going to land on your house. It's like,
Moses like, oh God, no.
Right. And it's like, we didn't find out about it till the last second. It's like, what, it's like, the bad outcome is happening, but
yep.
But it's like, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess
if we haven't heard a specific report of a comet coming to hit your house or the earth, right? Staying awake at night thinking about that, because you just watched
Yep.
some movie like
I feel like
Armageddon or whatever.
I think that's a good point. The worst thing you can do is non-productively worry about something you literally could not do anything about, because that hurts you. It also probably hurts the people around you because you're freaked out by it. But at the same time, worrying harder doesn't change anything that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
It only makes your life worse.
Right. Now, I think the ideal kind of fear, right, that you want to, especially in arts and entertainment, that you want to get, right, is I think about like Zelda 1, right? And you play you get to the last dungeon in Zelda 1, at least when I was a kid, right? And the music is different. It's like, right? And it's like, was I awake at night worried that Ganon was going to get me? Right?
Nope.
It's like,
but
no.
I
right?
got first time I heard that song, I got a little chill that I remember.
Right. And it's like, and in that level, there's enemies that aren't in any other level, right? And it's like, and the level is structured differently, like a skull, right? And it's like, you just created this sort of aura and this sort of feeling of spookiness.
Not quite anticipation. I'd say the word we're looking for here is trepidation.
Yeah, you're not afraid of a specific thing happening. You're not lying awake at night. There's no real danger. It's not a jump out and go boo surprise, right? It is this sort of aura of fear that you're experiencing, right? But it's not a real fear of any kind that's causing a problem or anything like that.
Yep.
And when it's over, it goes away, right? It's only there for the duration of the movie, for the duration of the haunted house.
Like similarly, when you watch or read, like, for example, a science fiction that causes you to think about a future path that is bad in a way that you have to think about it. Like, it gets stuck in your brain as like, well, what if, I don't know, ghost dubbing, Ghost in the Shell, something like you encounter a concept you haven't thought about, and now you got to mull it over and think about, like, what are your feelings on it? And when it's something novel, that's sometimes not trivial. Like, that edges into existential philosophy. And that's a really, like, laying awake at night before you go to bed, the night after you watch Ghost in the Shell for the first time, thinking about, what if you could copy a ghost? What the fuck? How do I approach that as a concept?
It's not scary, though. It's just,
well, it's scary. You can unearth fears you didn't know you would have when encountering a possible future.
But I think the thing is, all of these, you can contain those within the fictional context, right? It's like, I could like be reading a book of a character who's in like grave danger, right? And I'll be afraid even though I'm just reading a book, right? Because like my mind is in this generated world, right? Or video game, same thing, right?
Matt's got that dagger and they haven't even talked about it for like 5 chapters.
Right. It's like when I'm in this world that I've concocted or I'm, experiencing because of someone's artwork, or you're playing an RPG with your friend or whatever, right? It's like, I'm afraid within this fictional context, that world that has been built that I'm currently temporarily inhabiting in my mind. And then as soon as I exit that world, that is gone, right? And you can sort of, it's like, are you afraid? It's like, yeah, my body is feeling afraid because I'm, in my mind, I'm in this other scary ass place. But when I'm not in that scary ass place, no problem. Right?
Now, I'd say in the real world, like a useful technique, and I have expressed this to friends of ours who have had extreme anxieties over things over the years, is that if you're afraid of something and it is impacting your life, like that fear,
get help.
Well, yes, therapy is really, really powerful.
If you have any kind of phobia, you should seek a professional assistance if it's really impacting your life in a negative way, right? Like, if you have an arachnophobia and there aren't spiders everywhere, it's probably not a problem. Like, do you really need to get it treated? Considering, at least in the U.S., for the cost of healthcare, it's like, how many spiders are you running into, right? And when you do, what do? You run away? It's not right. But it's like, if you work in a barn, and there's spiders all the time, and you can't go get your work done in the barn and you can't get rid of all the spiders either. Now you should maybe do something, especially if it's causing a severe like panic reaction, right? But that's like debilitating you.
If it's not a phobia or a mental illness problem, and the thing you're afraid of is a real danger, like a real thing, then I think like the best advice I have, and this is very like strong advice from me, think about it a lot for a while, but your goal is to decide how relevant and likely is the threat to me in my life? Like, how real is it? And then, is there anything I could do that is reasonable to prepare for it? And if the answer is yes, and it's really reasonable, maybe do those things or think about those things. But if there's nothing you could do about it, or the things you could do about it are unreasonable, you have to make the conscious decision to not prepare for the thing, because there's no point in preparing for the thing.
Or dedicate your life to preparing for the thing in
True.
an unreasonable fashion.
Like, for example,
right?
if you were afraid of global thermonuclear war, to the point that you, and that is a rational thing to be worried about. That's something humans might do. The fact that we haven't is kind of amazing, and I'm glad. I hope we continue on this trajectory of having never used a thermonuclear device in anger. Like that is a yes.
We did it at least.
No, we've never
sometime.
we've never used a thermonuclear device.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Technicality, nobody
well,
cares.
in the sense that the scale
That's
between
not the point.
Yeah, but the scale.
The point is, yes, they used them one time.
Well, we used atomic weapons
times.
once, and the fact that we've
times.
never used them again. Well, in one conflict, in a short span of time, but we developed since then weapons that are orders of magnitude more catastrophic, and we've never used those. But if your fear is that humans will use them at scale, you could, if you want to dedicate your life to trying to stop that, there are organizations dedicated to trying to prevent that from happening. Like the Doomsday Clock, that's a real thing.
You can be one of those clock setting people.
Yeah. You could that's a good reason to get into politics. That's a good reason to write letters to prominent officials in the world, urging them to take steps toward non-proliferation treaties.
You could work at you can go into being a scientist and try to develop the N-jammer.
Not the
N-jammer canceller.
But one of the reasons humans have not used a thermonuclear device for real is because there are people dedicating their lives to trying to prevent that from happening. So
you could be one of those nuclear weapons inspectors for the UN who goes to places to make sure people aren't, up to no good.
Yep.
That could be you.
If you're afraid
that is somebody. That is a human being who does that job. That's a real job.
Norman Borlaug was afraid of famine on the earth, killing people. That was something that kept him up at night, and he dedicated his life to trying to end famine. And you know what? He got pretty far. Him and the organizations he worked with. Like, if you're really afraid of something real, you have to choose. If you want to dedicate your life to preventing it, you can. And if you're not going to dedicate your life to preventing it, or if it's an insurmountable task to prevent it, then you have to make your peace with the level of risk you're willing to accept as a person. If you keep worrying about it, but you don't make a decision, and you don't do anything about it, all you're doing is making yourself unhappy for no reason.
You're also, the fear, I guess, also being worried all the time actually, decreases it's almost sometimes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and sometimes it just, makes everything worse, right? You're afraid of making things worse, and therefore they are worse. Like the simplest example being like people have stage fright.
Yep.
It's like you're afraid of going up on the stage, and because you're afraid, you go up there and you're all nervous and you're stammering, and now it's as bad as you were worried it would be. Whereas if you weren't afraid in the first place, then you would go up there, and because you aren't feeling afraid, you're now going to perform significantly better, right? Than if you were worried about it. The worry caused the problem that you were worrying about. And so just worrying less, even if the worrying is founded, right, can actually improve the outcome.
Yep. Well, like imagine if you're
depending on the situation.
If you're terrified of cycling in the city, like on a bicycle, for example, if you are absolutely terrified every time you bike, then it is harder to concentrate on biking safely. And thus
probably get hurt.
You are more likely to get hurt than if you were chiller about it and reacting to the situation appropriately and taking
road ragey people are the ones who get all the problems, right? Whereas if you drive your car and you're just chilling, like, oh, just driving.
Yep.
Okay, guys going slow. Okay. Right. Just paying attention, not hitting anything, don't hit anything. Don't hit anything, don't hit anything. Guess what? You're less likely to hit things.
Yep.
Than if you're going, this fucking guy.
But also,
oops, I was mad about the guy and I hit something.
But on the other hand, a certain amount of fear, or at least appreciation of danger, is important. Like skiing's a good example. Almost everyone who gets hurt skiing are people who ski without adequate instruction and without facing the dangers that are real about skiing. Almost everyone who gets hurt skiing is skiing blue trails, but they are only skilled enough to ski green trails, and they end up going too fast and going off trail and hitting a tree. That almost everyone who dies skiing who didn't fall off a ski lift dies because of that specific thing. They're on a trail that's too steep for them because they don't appreciate the actual danger of that slope and do not take appropriate precautions and learn the skills necessary before they ski there. If you learn those skills, it's almost impossible to hurt yourself on a blue slope.
Well, on a blue slope, sure. But there are people who may appreciate the dangers of something and take necessary precautions, right? But are so fearless and daredevil-y that they do extremely high-risk things frequently. And even though they take necessary precautions to some extent, right, because they're also knowledgeable and practiced, they still eventually, right? Like some rock climber, he free climbs all these mountains, and it's like, yeah, he did it like 30 times. The 31st time fell to his death, right? Yep. Oh, this base jumping guy, base jumped all these places, and was really good at base jumping, and but then that was the last. One time happened to be the last time because it's an incredibly dangerous thing, regardless. And they were so fearless, right, and so daredevil-y that. Evil Knievel. It was how afraid was he to jump over shit with his motorcycle? But yeah, listen, it didn't work out too well. So,
as much as I progress skiing, like I ski for real double black diamonds at actual for real resorts, and I'm a very skilled skier. But you know what? I don't need to push the envelope forever. Like I've got I can
jumping out of helicopter skiing.
Well, helicopter skiing is actually pretty safe. And honestly, yeah, if you have the skills, big mountain skiing like that and that kind of snow, the danger for that kind of skiing, if you want to talk about something specific, is if you do it not knowing the route and not taking appropriate planning steps. Like you have to have planned it like a military operation. Like I'm dropped here, I go in this direction, I follow this exact route, I do not deviate. We have inspected this route several times via the helicopter. We know exactly what happens. That famous video of the guy who did the highest ski jump in history because he took the wrong route, he survived because he got lucky. If you take the wrong route in that kind of skiing, you might just ski off a cliff and die. But if you follow the route you planned, it is actually pretty hard to hurt yourself because that's actually it's surprisingly easy to ski that kind of snow compared to other kinds of skiing.
Regardless, it's a lot more dangerous than sitting on your couch.
It is.
Which is, right? So you don't need to go take it too far, right?
But rock climb, bouldering and rock climbing is another good example of there's a certain kind of person who gets tricked into this idea of you always have to be progressing. You climb to V9, well, you start working on your V10s.
Even if they're not
to get good enough to climb V5s and just keep climbing V5s because they're really fun for the rest of your life.
Well, I don't think it's always a need to progress. I think some people are just adrenaline junkies, right?
Yep.
And they're not. It's like they do the level 5, and then it's like, well, level 5 ain't fun anymore, right? It's not because they need to progress. It's because they're not getting the rush, and they're addicted, and they need so that they had to go push it further into a risk. And pushing it further is almost with any sort of those kind of things is necessarily a riskier activity.
Well, because what you said is seeking the rush. Like people who do well in those kinds of sports,
there's not enough fear involved.
They seek flow state. Like I actually am not seeking a rush. I'm seeking flow state. I like the fact that I can go to a double black diamond glade through the woods, and I'm not feeling a rush because I'm competent and I'm just skiing through it in a flow state. When I feel
other people are seeking a rush.
Exactly. And if I were seeking a rush, I would have to do things at this point that are above the level of what I would consider acceptable risk.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to have, in some ways, the rush comes from some kind of fear, right? Because if you didn't feel like it was dangerous, the rush wouldn't happen to begin with.
Yep.
Right. And so, But if you had a little bit more fear or a different kind of fear, you wouldn't be doing that stupid shit to begin with.
So
it's too dangerous.
The last time I felt a rush of any kind on a bicycle was the second to last time I went mountain biking. And the rush wasn't because I was doing a really technical trail and it was difficult. The rush was because I made a miscalculation and jumped off the trail, and I was in the air looking down at the scrub field I was about to land on.
Yeah. See, that's the thing is you come out and you're like, oh yeah, if you just follow the trail when you jump out of the helicopter, you'll be fine. But it's like
don't fuck up.
Miscalculations. That's part of the risk. Yeah. That's
the risk of heliskiing is if you don't follow the path that you planned. The risk,
and you might not, even if you did everything right. That could happen. It's a very risky behavior.
Yep.
So, and I gotta do that shit because if I die, if I'm an old man, I'm not gonna be laying there like, I'm 90. I lived to 90 and I never did the heliskiing. That was a mistake. That's not gonna happen.
I'm definitely doing heliskiing. I'm kind of mostly I gotta plan it a couple.
Let me know when you plan that so I know when to end Geek Nights.
Yeah. There are some fairly easy, well-known heliskiing routes that you can just do, and there's even guides. You just follow the guy.
A tiny little helicopter that brings you to the top of a hill in Central Park. Just the world's tiniest helicopter. It's like a guy pedaling.